Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of art. It's the Tenet Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson, coming to you from the 40 West Arts District in Lakewood, Colorado, and joining me from his art bunker in Rapid City, South Dakota, my brother from another mother, my artner. You know him as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, co-host extraordinaire, Wes Brown.
Todd, how you doing, my friend? Oh my God, it's another week. Here we go again. Hey, I picked up my dad's lawnmower because he's living with me now, and it's a riding lawnmower. And you know my yard. It takes me like 30 minutes to cut my grass. I got it done like 10. Had more time trying to back up and move forward. It was funny.
I can picture it already. I spent a wonderful evening this past Saturday up at Central City, or the City of Central, if you've listened to that episode. For the Gilpin County Arts Association's 76th annual juried show. You got name dropped as Eric Miller, board president for the Gilpin County Arts Association, was giving out the prizes. He recognized our podcast to the crowd that was there. So you got a little shout out there. He was disappointed that you weren't there this weekend.
Yeah, I know. It's sad.
You know what? Who I took though with me?
A brick though, huh?
We do need to do a brick. You know who I took with me, though?
Who?
My lovely wife.
Oh, my God. No way.
And, you know, we've talked a little bit about doing some merch with your face on it as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world. But out of the blue, her not being privy to our conversation, she said, you know what? When I go to these things with you from now on, I'm going to get a T-shirt that says something like, he brings me because I'm hotter than Wes Brown. Wow. I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. Made me actually laugh out loud. So great weekend. And then I went to the Highlands Art Festival, and we saw a bunch of our friends from Bridge Project and other artists, Christina Davies, Brett Matarazzo, Dan Drossman, Joey Curlin, did some printmaking with Joey Curlin.
I've seen some pictures of him doing some work. Yeah. I thought that was cool. Yeah. Somebody was sharing some stuff on Instagram. So that was really
Megan
cool.
Morgan, she was there. They all said hello.
Thank you. I miss them. I wish I could travel better or more, maybe, or better.
You'll get there.
I'll get there. It's only a matter of time.
Great weekend of art.
Good.
You were missed and appreciated and thought about.
That's awesome.
Just thought I'd pass that along. All right. Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can always find out what we're up to via our social media on Instagram at Tenet Podcast, our Tenet Podcast Facebook page, and of course, our website, tenetpodcast.com. And if you have the time and feel so inclined, if you would take a moment and leave a review on whatever platform you listen to, we would greatly appreciate it if you gave us a little bit of a shout out. All right. You ready, Wes Brown?
I am ready. Let's do this art thing.
All right. You got your eyeballs and ear holes warmed up?
Yes. As warm as they can be.
How about your tongue? Your tongue good?
It's never good, but we'll get through it.
All right. We're ecstatic to talk with our next guest. We've been following him on Instagram for a while. You can check out his stunning work at his website, chrislongpainter.com, and you can follow him on Instagram at long_painter. Chris, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me, Todd and Wes.
Yeah, it's good to meet you. So
very nice to meet you both.
Thanks.
So tell us where you're zooming into, or in from, I should say, this evening.
I'm zooming in from Connecticut. I have a house now just outside of Hartford. So it's a little bit of a change. For the better part of 11 or 12 years, I was on the road in an RV with my family. We were full-time nomads who used to spend seasons in different locations around the country. So now I get to spend every season in one place.
Nice.
Do you like that transition, or has it been a hard transition?
I might eventually. It's still a little frustrating. I still have some wanderlust. It's bizarre sometimes that certain times of the year I'm not where I thought I would be, and I just kind of wake up and I'm in Connecticut again. Oh, okay.
Kind of like Groundhog Day.
There you go.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, I spent so long in New Orleans that it's funny to not be there during festival season, between Mardi Gras, Jazz Fest, French Quarter Fest. And every year I feel like a real FOMO. I was just about to say FUBU, but that's not right. FOMO, fear of missing out.
oh, sure.
And I still have that thing where I think that I have to go set up for some kind of show or market, and I just don't anymore. And I'm not there anymore.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that would be weird. I mean, for doing that, traveling for that length of time and living out of an RV, I would think that would be, a really weird change. That's a good portion of your life right there. And obviously having your whole family with that puts a whole new spin on the whole thing.
Yeah, I actually grew up in this town, and I moved away at 17. And then I've been on the road and traveling for so much of my adult life. To come back to it, I still remember how to get to different places in different parts of the country, and I'll confuse them when I'm like, I still need my GPS after living here for almost 3 years. If I'm going certain places, I still need to put my GPS on. It's crazy. I mean, it just may be, age, but I also assume that I'd be doing better than this.
We all do.
Yeah.
I don't know what your better than this is, but yeah, I can relate to that sometimes. Do you still have the RV, or the RV's gone?
No, we sold it. We're looking for a new one.
So the travel bug is so embedded into your DNA at this point that even though you've set down some roots back in the area where you grew up, you still have that wanderlust and you still want to get back out on the road.
Because when you are going cross country in an RV, you become it. How do I describe this? It's almost like the closest thing to a hunter-gatherer that I've experienced, because you're always hunting for the next location. You always have to hunt for where you can get water out west in the desert when you're kind of dry camping, boondocking sort of thing. You need to figure out where gas, you need to figure out where you can get suitable enough food if you're in a food desert, especially like certain parts of the deep south. It can get a little hairy, especially because my kids have a lot of food allergies as well as myself. So it was, you're always thinking several steps ahead to where you're going to get your next, there is no kind of squirreling things away because you have no space for it. So, I mean, it's like you go shopping every day. You completely repack and figure out how you're going to fit like any new item of clothing sort of thing. You have a very limited space. And with 4 people, even though it was a big RV with 4 people, especially with all my painting stuff that I had to carry around with me.
It's something that most people, unless they've experienced it firsthand, they don't even think about. They just think, oh, wow, how cool would that be to, I think Wes had considered that kind of lifestyle for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I even got so far as we were going to do a 5th wheel, and my wife's a graphic artist, and I was getting out of nonprofit biz, and I took a job, but bought a 1-ton Dodge truck, and then was looking for the RV, and then it just never materialized. And then my mom got sick, but that's a whole nother story. But Yeah, so we were really excited about it and curious, and we did all the research. And so my question, because when did you stop RVing? When did you buy your house in Connecticut?
When was it? It was 2021.
Okay, so it was post pandemic.
So yeah, because we were still on the road when everything shut down,
Yeah.
and we were trapped in Arizona for several months.
So my question is, you've been RVing for a while prior to that. And
Yeah.
then, this movie Nomadland came out in 2020. The pandemic hit. Everybody was buying, at least out here, you couldn't find an RV. Like everybody was, and then everybody was coming to South Dakota to RV park.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you started reading how the RV industry, like people were really cracking down where you could boondock at, or if you could park in somebody's parking lot, or if you could park on the road. And it seemed like the pandemic, and maybe in conjunction with this movie, everybody thought, oh, it looks so much fun. And then it just kind of like changed the whole industry. What was your feel prior, let's say like 4 or 5 years prior? And then once the pandemic hit, how did that impact the whole RV thing?
I'm going to say that it was probably easiest for us to travel when my youngest was 3. So probably 2015 to 2017 while we were traveling. We had gotten the hang of it. It had been about 9-ish years. And we were able to figure out everywhere where we could boondock and stay. We had a network of other homeschooling families that we'd meet up with and that we'd sometimes travel with. We were part of this kind of what was it called? Thousand Trails. It was where you could stay at these parks that were located around the country. And you had a certain number of nights that you could stay there as part of the membership. And we were members in a lot of those things. So we were always like, we had the ability to pretty much go across the entire continental US and hit whatever we wanted to, whenever we wanted to. And it was easy. And then the pandemic hit. And when that hit, we were boondocking in Arizona, and everyone was a little fearful. Our kids and the other kids who were also traveling in other RVs, they had to stay 6 or 10 feet away from each other outside in the middle of the desert because no one knew what was happening. And eventually they announced that you had to, what was it called? It was like a shelter in place thing. And so we had to stay, and we were fortunate that we found a place to stay for a couple of months during that. But then it forced so many of our friends off the road and disrupted absolutely everything that I had going. And then a lot of things were just closed. I'm sure from the outside looking in, if you were like in a city like New York, you would have thought that my situation was easy because there was a lot of space, and I wasn't like, I could be as far away if I had to from people as I wanted to. And all circumstances have their particular challenges, but it's one of those things where I could probably talk 4 or 5 hours and describe what went on, and we could go back and forth exchanging stories about where we all were. And it basically sucked, but things got a little better as it went on. But as far as when we moved in here, we were kind of ready because our lives had completely changed from just a few years previous,
Yeah.
I don't think that a lot of the people that we knew are RVing anymore either.
That's
So
really interesting. I mean, because you don't think about it until you're, like I said, you have that experience or in that
hmm,
situation. So that was really kind of the end of a bunch of people deciding that, all right, I'm not doing the RV thing anymore. And I take it that's the reason you guys decided to get off the road too and buy a house. Yeah.
part of it, yeah. I mean, I was the only full-time fine artist that I knew that was doing it. I'm sure there were other ones, but I hadn't personally met them. Most of the other families, their situations, one or both of the parents worked in some sort of IT or like social media or managing things remotely. So they had a very different career paths. I had kind of a unique situation where I might have been able to stay perpetually just traveling and on the road, but it didn't feel right.
Yeah, now I'm even reading articles now. They're waiting for, when the RV bubble is going to bust, where, the market just collapse on the RV industry. So it's just really kind of interesting. And like I said, we never pulled the trigger on it, but I was really like knee deep into it at the beginning. And then, when the pandemic hit, that threw everything off. And then it's been my life has been kind of upside down for a few years now anyway with my parents. But, I probably dodged a bullet for, for not doing it.
Well, during that specific time, yes, I would definitely recommend that you give it a shot because it's fun.
Yeah.
You can probably do all the things that you're doing now, like with this podcast on the road, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people do a lot of this nature of work now because the upload speeds are fast enough. I remember talking to some people who had to sit outside of a Starbucks or a grocery store that had Wi-Fi for hours at a time. They used to have to drive like an hour or two to get to a specific store because they had upload speeds that were fast enough for their job, and they have to drive all the way back. I don't think that's the case now. I think it's a
Yeah.
little bit better.
Yeah. That's probably
Yeah. I'm
true.
sure it's gotten better. But yeah, it's kind of hard to think of how much technology is and internet has changed in the last few years, even. Like it just gets better and better. But a few years ago, that would have been another thing that you don't think about. Like, hey, I work remotely and I have to get to a place that actually has decent internet so I can actually do my job. And,
Mm.
if you're out in the middle of nowhere, those places are probably few and far between.
I only had to get about 2 or 3 minutes of okay internet per day in order to do everything. So I was lucky because all I needed to do was be able to upload it, just
Yeah.
upload an image and write a little something about it, and then I could kind of post and ghost about it.
You touched earlier on the fact that you've always been kind of a nomad since 17. You said you left home or what have you. But what was the catalyst to purchase an RV and go on the road? Like what was the
Okay. Well,
reason behind that?
when I was 17, I went to an art school in Connecticut, the Lime Academy College of Fine Art. I went there for sculpture. I was a figure and portrait sculptor. I went there for 4 years. And when I got out, I thought that that's what I was going to do. I was going to work at foundries. I was going to work on commissions. I was going to put together shows for myself. Um, I was pretty prolific at the time. I was in my early 20s. And I just did it all day, every day. And I thought that I could make it work. Well, 8 years later, and it wasn't working. And by that point, I had a wife and a small child, and I was working 75 or 80 hours a week, teaching, doing workshops, foundry work, trying to put together my own shows, doing small commissions for people, and still not being able to make it work. it was a little disheartening. So we decided in 2008, when the housing bubble popped, that we were going to see if we could get on the road, because I was convinced that there were other opportunities, other places in the country, that New England was just not going to be the place for it to happen. So we got into an RV and we hit the road, and I had to get a job selling cookware at Sam's Clubs at first. I sold Titanware cookware, but I was terrible at it. Absolutely. I don't know if either one of you ever had those jobs where you had to wear the little microphone and talk to people in like a Costco or Sam's Club setting and like do a demo or something, but that's what I signed up for. I was terrible at it. So I went to folding origami and making things out of plastic in the pans. And somehow between that and bullshitting my way through it, I was able to get around the country for a few months. And then I got some jobs working for some other sculptors in different places. I felt as though that's how it was going to be in perpetuity. Like it was just going to be me having to jump from place to place and never really developing anything on my own. So I decided to stop. And I happened to have a friend of mine from high school. Her mother lived in New Orleans and had a business there. And I don't know how I got in contact with her, but she said, "Oh, you guys have an RV? You can just drive down." And I was like, "What? Why would we go?" And she's like, "Oh, you can just come here and sell your art." I said, "Oh, so I can sell sculpture? Like I can, is there like a market for a sculpture?" Like, "No, but you can sell paintings." I said, I don't paint. Like even at art school, I never painted. Like I did everything I could to avoid painting at all costs. And she said, "No, I think it's going to work out for you. You should come down and give it a shot." With our last money, we took a chance and drove down to New Orleans. And I started selling just out on the street. I couldn't paint at the time. So my wife, who I met her at the academy, and she's a great painter, but she was like a stay-at-home mother. She was the one who sort of figured out how we could do all the RV travel in the first place. It wasn't me. I mean, I could not do the logistics if my life depended on it. So I sort of had to rely on her to show me how to do things like paint oysters, or how to just do like a simple shrimp painting, something that was along the lines of like a touristy thing that I could sell. And I started doing it, and then I started making money, and it just kind of went from there.
So literally, you really don't have any kind of painting background, and
No.
you're teaching yourself and getting instruction from your wife who paints.
Yes.
And you're selling enough to make it work.
Yeah. Without knowing what I was doing. I have a very special gift. It's that I can convince myself that I'm just proficient enough. So I got out there, and oh my gosh. Yeah, maybe someday I'll send you some of the images of what I used to sell in the beginning, because I just like I could draw, I just could not deal with the medium. Like I started off trying watercolor, gouache, acrylic. It just never clicked before, and I never really did color theory or anything. So I did as many as I could, and I painted 20 or 30 original paintings a day. because what else was I going to do? I had to figure out how to make it work. And I figured if I did them small enough, and if I figured out what tourists might want to buy, that I could just keep buying myself time. That I could go out there at the French market or at night on Frenchman Street in the Marigny in New Orleans. If I could just figure out how to make just enough, I could teach myself continually. But then actually, it would be better than the sculpture because I wouldn't just be investing all that time and energy for other people's projects and not really grow anything myself. I'd actually be teaching myself how to do it. And I'd be kind of learning along the way.
It seems to me like the world of sculpture it's a difficult path, you know? There's
definitely. And now there is no real, I mean, there's somewhat of a need, but what I did with the more classical approach, you know, of building the figure out from an armature, you know, with anatomy and all that sort of thing. I mean, you can just scan people now. I mean, you can just print them in a big printer. I mean, there isn't like, I spent so long learning anatomy and how to use calipers and like increase things, ratio, proportion, like how things look in space, how they sort of how people will react to them at different scale and at different height. And then, yeah, I just didn't need that info anymore. So I had to teach myself sort of a new language, and I was way too impatient to actually do it the right way. So as I speak to you, you probably notice that I'm not using a lot of the magazine. I call it the magazine nomenclature, where people, they really like to go into the kind of minutia of how hue or color temperature work. And I don't really know if I believe what I'm hearing or what I'm reading when they're talking about it, because I see things a little different. Like I'm more about the space and the surface topography of a piece and the sacred geometry and where things and how they relate to the boundaries of it, you know, because that's the world I came from at being a sculptor. So I don't really have I have the capacity to speak about it. I just don't like speaking about it in those terms.
Sure. Yeah.
And it pisses some people off because they think, oh, well, you do this, you do so many pieces a year, you know, like, shouldn't you be teaching this or writing about it? No. I really don't want to. I feel as though that, you know, and you like, stop me if I'm rambling here,
No.
but I feel as though that the whole practice that I started in the beginning when I was trying to figure out how to paint, of painting all those paintings every day, that kind of rolled into a daily painting routine, and it became like the meditation. I think that's the profound aspect of it for me. It's not so much the intellectual reflection of what I just did or what I might do. It's all about experiencing it, being in the moment, getting through it, and getting on to the next one, and having it be fun too. Like,
so are you as prolific today as you were back when you first started? Are you still pounding out, you know, that many, or have you kind of?
No, well, I don't have to do like business card or dollar bill size paintings to sell for $20 at a time. I don't have that kind of stamina.
Right.
I paint between 2 and 5 a day
Oh,
now,
wow.
which is a lot for some people. But I'm looking for the energy, like a balance of energy and impact. And it doesn't always come with the first piece that you work on. Doesn't always come with the second. Sometimes the fourth or fifth it hits. Sometimes it's the first, and the rest of everything that you do in the day is just garbage, you know? So some days when I'm posting one piece, I've painted between four. Some days I go crazy. If I have enough time, I'll do like 8 or 10, and most of them will be garbage. And it's an idea that I started. I'll have a bad start to it. Like, it just won't feel right. I'll just throw it to the side. I'll start a new one.
So do you reuse the canvas?
I reuse as much as I can, because I paint on wood panels.
There you go.
So I can be a little rougher with them and really scrape it down and get it back down to the ground, and then restart all over again.
Yeah.
So
a question kind of going back to when you first started, and you said you had this ability to convince yourself you're good enough, or however you said it. How long did it take you to, because you were pounding out those small ones, and I didn't realize they were that small, but you were pounding out those a lot. How long did it take you to go?
People told me that I should stop. People walking by who were high and drunk in New Orleans at all hours of the day would watch me out there painting little pieces off of reference from my phone, and they saw my display and what I had, and they said, "Oh, well, if you want to do this, you should probably go to art school." And then I had a few people come by and say, maybe this isn't for everybody. So sort of thing, like it was not encouraging to begin with. I had to keep encouraging myself.
How long did it take you till you felt like, or people stopped telling you to stop painting? 6 months, a year?
I had a business like in New Orleans. That was a seasonal one for like 7 years. And my last night out at this night market called the Art Garden, someone was talking to her boyfriend or husband, looking at my paintings, and she was looking at him and she said, "Well, I just wish that he knew what he was doing, because this is the kind of scene that we could really use in our house, but it's very, very crude." And so, yeah, I got shit the entire time I was there. And I mean, I can handle it. Maybe I deserved it somewhat, but the raw criticism never stops, which is why I really enjoyed the incubator that New Orleans is so much, because it gives you the opportunity to really hustle. If you want to make something out of yourself. At least when I was there in that kind of special post-Katrina time, when the movie industry had just moved in, Hollywood South, like I started around 2011. So yeah, just around there. But it wasn't like, I'm not complaining or anything. Like it's kind of like, I really appreciate that people were always keeping me on my toes, because snide comments really do help you sometimes. And when people pick things up and they look at it, and you can tell that they're looking at one aspect of it, and then they put it down and they just walk away, you just kind of file all that away, and you begin to figure out what is appealing. I think I knew to a certain extent in 3 dimensions what was appealing, but I really I really had no idea as far as still life and then later landscape, what people were actually looking for, where they were envisioning this piece going in their home, in their space, you know? So I didn't understand things like design palette, color world things. I just kind of used whatever colors I thought like I had enough of that day sometimes. Like I got a whole bunch of free red. Ooh, I'm gonna fill my table up with red paintings. I got to use all this red up. You know, like
I love that.
those kind of special notions. Do either one of you paint?
No.
Or
No,
no?
you're not
Okay.
talking to anybody that paints here. We
All
love
right.
talking painting with people,
Okay.
but you're like the perfect person to talk to us about painting, because sometimes we get
Okay.
people that are, well versed, been doing it for 20,
Yes.
30 years or whatever. And, it's very educational, but some of it is lost on us because we're photographers, we're not painters. So
Okay. Like with any pursuit, there are passionate people who create these little sub languages for what they are really passionate about and how they communicate with each other. You think they're speaking the same language, but sometimes they're not. And I've had conversations with other painters, and they just kind of assume with me that I'm following what they're saying. And I wasn't, but I nodded and I smiled. That's what you're supposed to do, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You want them to think that you're engaged in the conversation, right?
I usually am.
Yeah, but you might not be following everything that they're saying, and
No.
you never know. They might throw a nugget your way that you can glom onto and go, "Oh yeah, I totally get that. Like I can see that. I can apply that particular whatever that is, right?"
Yes.
But in your own way. And I think what's compelling and what's interesting about this is that first of all, no one does this the same way. Everybody does it, figures it out on their own, and figures out what works for them if they're doing it after a length of time, and selling work and being successful. But you have an amazing amount of followers on social media, so the proof is in the pudding, and that it boils down to the work. The work is honest. It obviously resonates with a ton of people. And then at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You make money, you're able to support your family, you're doing something you love and enjoy, and you've figured out a way to live your life the way you want to live it. And to me, that's like the pinnacle of success right there.
Thanks. I'm certainly having fun doing it.
And that's great to hear, because some people, I think,
Yeah.
don't necessarily have fun or enjoy it. I think the vast majority do, but I think there's some people that are just doing it because they don't know what else to do with themselves.
I figured out that I'm just one of those people who naturally fails a lot at a lot of things. Like I'm not a handy person. I can learn about things relatively quickly and do them once or twice, but then as soon as I'm no longer dealing with it, like I forget everything. And then I shouldn't be touching it ever again. Like I figured out how to change my brakes a few years back, and I was very impressed with myself. I would not trust myself to even take a tire off now without watching a YouTube video like of the proper way to do it again.
That's the beautiful thing of the age that we live in, right? Like we're just all monkeys with supercomputers in our back pockets, and we can turn on a YouTube video and learn something.
YouTube a lot for
Yeah.
a lot of things. For both of you who are photographers, I mean, you both take a lot of photos to get the kind of photos that you want, right? I mean, you go through a lot of images to sift through in
Yeah,
order to get the right one. Like, I'm going to assume that when you're looking through, like if you go and you're on a shoot and you want to shoot whatever you're doing and you maybe take 200 shots, that it's fun to pick out the best one for you, right?
it can be an arduous task at times.
Okay.
There is some fun of pulling through the images and finding that one that you think is the one, but it can be painstaking and drive you out of your mind at the same time. And I'll tell you that that's probably my least favorite thing to do of the process. I love being on
Really?
location. I love the process of lighting something the way
Okay.
I kind of envision it to look. I work a lot on location, so there's a lot of elements that I don't have control over. And so there's always the I call it the art of compromise, because there's just certain things that, sometimes it's just not going to play it the way you'd like it to go or go your way. But I enjoy that part of the troubleshooting process, that piece of the puzzle. I love the interaction because I shoot a lot of people. I love the interaction and the education I get and spending time with somebody and making that connection. So I love that part of the process. But the computer end of it, culling through images and all that, not necessarily my favorite thing to do, I would say.
Yeah, and I find myself a lot of times I don't do it as my sole way of making money. So it's a little different than Todd, because Todd is a commercial photographer and this is what he does for a living. But there's times I'm like, why am I doing this? You cull through all these images and you're like, oh my God, I suck. I don't know why I'm doing this. I should just quit. And then every now and then you'll get that image that like, oh my God, that's a great shot. And it gets you excited again. I'm sure it's so different than you. Like you said, you're not quite there. You're making a lot of not necessarily mistakes, but it's just not feeling right. And you're not that you're like giving up. You're just like, why am I doing? What's the problem here? And then all of a sudden, poof, there's the one that works. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Like sometimes I go through a lot before I figure out exactly what I wanted to do with something.
Yeah.
And I don't know. For me, I've kind of embraced not having my shit together, and I think that's part of my process, is in the morning just sort of starting pretty fresh every day, because I rarely build off of what I just did yesterday. Like I start all over again, and sometimes it's the same errors over and over again. And when I'm done, I actually kind of enjoy going through and looking at what really didn't work and what worked and why it did. And I think it's just like I personally need to see a lot. Like I need to produce a lot, multiple pieces, different sizes, completely different palettes sometimes, in order to figure out the memory I wanted to kind of realize. Because with me, it's when I'm painting these landscapes, I'm trying to figure out how to describe a memory of the place I had, and not so much just do a version of it from my reference sources. So, yeah, sometimes memories can be strange, in that perhaps in the beginning, you feel as though, at least when you work as I do, that what you remember of a location, of a time of day, of a certain feeling is right there. It's right, like you can almost touch it, and it's not moving. And then as soon as you start to work on it, it just kind of floats away a little bit.
You're trying to convey a feeling of what you experienced. And that's what I get when I look at your painting. Is I definitely, it
cool.
resonates with me because it gives me a feeling. whatever that may be, one of your night scenes. You have a bunch of scenes of camping scenarios, and I love that because I love to camp, and I've spent a ton of time in the outdoors camping. And I think you do it really well, man. And so I think that's what
I
people glom
appreciate that.
onto.
Yeah, all the reference photos, are pretty much images that my wife photographed of our family in all different areas of the country, in RVs, around other people with RVs, and like having campfires and having little parties outside. And I need to figure out everything I have to reduce from the image and sort of distill it down to the basics. And then I kind of have to time travel back to what I remember of it to fill in the gaps. And I think that's what's interesting. When I look at some other landscapes, I really am drawn to the ones that have a feeling that don't necessarily make sense immediately. That you sort of have to sit with for just a moment. You need to allow your eye to move around and across it, and to back up, to be different distances away from it to see it. And that ultimately you get like a real sense of environment. It's not just a copy of a place with a well-placed light, maybe, a deer next to a stream or something, because that's what they tell you sells really well, right? It's supposed to be mountain landscapes with a stream and a few deer, or at least that's what I read somewhere. I don't know what kind of screwed up publication it was that I found that nugget of info in, but when I read that, I was like, really? Well, maybe, yeah, because that's kind of like what Bob Ross did. He was kind of mining from that sort of thing.
So it sounds to me like you like to figure out the puzzles, right? Like from the beginning of figuring out how you're just going to make this thing work and support your family to actually building your skill set up as a painter to where you are today. It sounds like you really kind of enjoyed like observing people as they were looking at your art and trying to like focus in on what was that thing that compelled them to even stop, and then what compels them to like go ahead and put it down and then walk away, right? Like what is that element, what is that thing that draws people in? I heard on another podcast that you did,
Okay.
you talked about this game that you would play with people called Something or Nothing. Talk a little bit
Yes,
about
it was
that.
one of my favorite games. Because if you know the person, it was usually another artist. If you know them well enough that you can read some of their body language as well as like the timing of how they respond and what they choose as to aspects that they enjoy of the piece or things that they don't understand. That's what maybe helped me out the most, is playing the something or nothing game with other artists. Because is this something? Is this something to sort of pursue? Is this a path that you can kind of follow down and it will yield something? Or is this something that should just be thrown away? And it's such a relief to be working on something and just walk up to someone who you trust enough that they'll give you snap opinion and say, is this something or nothing? And have them say, it's nothing, man. Start over. Or nothing. I don't even know what that is. Or some of the kind of rather dismissive, kind of jokey comment back. It cuts through all the bullshit, and then it allows you to do that reset thing that I'm always looking to do it for myself too. Like when I start my process every day of just sort of going through and trying to figure out what I'm painting and the feeling I'm trying to get on something, like I have to play that game with myself. It also helps to be able to go back and ask yourself what certain people would probably think of it, because if you have a certain amount of effort invested into something, sometimes you don't want to hear that you just polished a turd.
Right.
And so I have the ghost of certain people in my head that I can just sort of be like, oh, yeah, they would probably tell me that this is nothing, So I'm able to kind of psychically reach them and kind of pull some opinions.
Kind of channel their mindset for a moment and kind of evaluate it from what you experience with them as far as
I sure hope that's what it is. It's either that or I'm just having fun doing make believe. Like I'd like to think that it's something that could actually, like, you could actually be having a meaningful kind of connection, even if it's just with the idea of another individual's personality and opinions, and that you could sort of tune into it almost like a frequency. I'd like to think that that's possible, that it's not just, that we're very cut off from one another. I think that it's definitely more fun to think that you could be actually connecting with someone when you think about them than not connecting with anyone ever for any reason.
So when you get this,
I like that.
this permission that it's nothing and to stop and reevaluate and move on to something different. So what happens when this feeling comes in and it says, no, this is something? How is that different for you than if it's nothing?
When I feel as though I have captured what I set out to, that's usually when I know I have to stop. And that's my notice of completion. Yeah. And this is a little rough to say, but I feel like I could have progressed a lot further initially if someone I really trusted, or many people I really trusted who had been a lot more established in painting and had been doing it for a great many years. I just didn't know a lot of people. If they could have just kind of clued me in on when I was spinning my wheels, because I feel as though I spun my wheels a lot the first few years. Like I may have done all those paintings, and a good amount sold, as street art, but I think it took me a lot more time than it probably needed to for me to learn the kind of lessons that I had to, being self-taught, the plight of the autochthonous individual. But I just didn't have those resources. So I had to eventually figure out that I was just that I just wasted like several weeks of my time, and I think with the genre of landscape, when I first decided that that's the direction I wanted to go, it probably could have benefited me if I had reached out to other landscape painters or really tried to get in with that community. of people who do plein air. Or I didn't though. I had this notion that I was going to go it alone. That I could figure it out. I was the hunter gatherer. Like I'm a big boy. I wear the big boy pants. I drive around in an RV. I can figure out how to get water when I need it. You know, like I can avoid the coyotes. I can figure all this out myself. So I just never really asked for help at some points when I maybe should have. Do you guys feel that way about your path with photography?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
especially me.
Okay.
Yeah, I never, I like I've said this a couple times. Like I con myself in believing that I don't want to do this for a living because it's going to ruin, you know, the love of it. And what a con! What a con!
Oh,
It just
I've had that conversation a
yeah,
lot of times with myself.
yeah,
That,
and it's
that's
a
been
con.
that's been the unfortunate focus of many a meditation session. Like, how can you possibly make a business out of this passion and keep it going, and not just run it right in the ground.
But I think you said it right there. You had passion, and that's what it takes. You got to have a passion for something in order to keep doing it. Because man, when you're sitting out there and people are making comments about it and, giving you a ration of shit, right? Like that takes a lot of balls to keep coming back day after day and doing it.
You know what
What kind of
though? It was funny too.
Oh, I'm
Like
sure.
I'm always one for a laugh, and I can take a joke. I'm from New England. I grew up with people, who are constantly, like as a form of affection. All my family, all my friends, you take little digs. You're always um, you're always looking to put someone in their place, even if they don't need to be put in their place, just so you can get that little one-up advantage. And it's a constant back and forth that I think maybe some people don't grow up with to the extent that I did, but I appreciate it because that allowed me to kind of go with it too. Like for a little while, people just knew me as the grumpy painter. I was recognized in California by a couple of folks when it was maybe 4 or 5 years in when I was doing it. And I think I might have been in Los Angeles, and they walk by me and I hear them go, "Oh, it's that guy. It's the grumpy painter from New Orleans." I'm like, "What? That's what you remember?" And I'm pretty sure that they bought something from me, and then I spoke to them. That's why they remembered me in the first place. They didn't actually say anything, but yeah. And then I told that story to a few people when I got back to Louisiana, and they thought that was pretty good too. No, I'm all for, real conversations. And if it's fun and funny, like, I mean, yeah, it can totally be at my expense because when I look back now, it was all worth it. I did get something out of each interaction, even though if you had seen a video of it, you might have been like, wow, I can't believe that they said that. I also can't believe how you responded to them. Like, is that you really want to go down that path, Chris?
So
Yeah.
what kind of response would be in the mix if
Oh my
somebody came
gosh.
up and talked some shit?
Well, I never got into physical altercations, and I never resorted to outright name calling. But
Because that's lowbrow.
well, I didn't want to put myself in harm's way. I just wanted to, if someone in whatever state they were in, wanted to give me a hard time, I was looking to see how far I could take it, because, and for those people who are listening who have been part of who have done markets, or who have been like in that circuit of traveling and doing different shows, sometimes those interactions can be very beneficial. And maybe not them, but someone who's overhearing the conversation and the back and forth will be drawn over to you and will see that you actually have a personality and that you're willing to push back a little. And I think that sometimes endears you and makes whatever you're offering just a little bit more tempting to invest in. So I was always up for that. But yeah, I've had my booth flipped a few times,
Jesus.
Because
I laugh because after 160 episodes, like this is the first time we've talked to an artist that has at their table actually physically. And maybe there's been other people we've talked to, but nobody's ever said it outright.
Yes. One very inebriated lady didn't like the fact that I wasn't willing to give her a discount. And I don't remember what I said, because I was just slinging whatever comments I could. I was just trying to be funny, like if a real good zinger came across, I just let it loose, because, you're around hundreds and hundreds of people just milling about. And I let it go to this one, and she turned around and she like King Kong fisted my display, and boom, bunch of stuff knocked over. And I never got that angry, because it was so interesting to have that happen. And I always had great nights afterward. And, when you're out there hustling, you're doing it to pay bills. You're out there, you're showing people that you're working, you have paintings that they can purchase, like you're a denizen of the city. Like even if I was like a transplant, or someone called me a carpetbagger,
That's like a term from the 1860s.
Yeah. Even if that was my situation, I was still, yeah, I was all in it. And then it was a little bit of a transition to not do that anymore, and to just be on the road and working kind of outside. I used to have to set up my little studio outside the RV on nice days, or sometimes I just work at my galley or kitchen table. And now I have a studio and I work in here. It feels like I am in the proverbial ivory tower. Like I've just cloistered myself away, where I can just do my little whatevers during the day. And then like I get pigeons to carry my paintings off to whoever, and they fly back with good news. I don't know. Like I don't have any of the interactions anymore. And
so do you feel like a prisoner sometimes because you're so isolated?
I don't know. I have a little bit of the addict personality, where once I start to do something, like I can really kind of lose myself in it, which is why I can't play video games anymore. I shouldn't be anywhere near a lot of drugs, like, because I'll just keep taking them. And when it comes to kind of being the exhibitionist and working on something in front of an audience, having like many, many people sort of pass by you, say you're up to, and getting some of the energy and kind of using that to adjust things, it was very beneficial for a long time for me. And I'm learning how to exist without it. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I wish that one of my neighbors would come up and sort of peek inside and be like, hey, yeah, you should probably throw that right in the fucking trash. You know? But when I was on the road too, like I used to paint in Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. And I went there to kind of use it as a studio, but I also was kind of chasing that interaction with people. And it didn't have to be a positive one. It just had to be an interaction. Like I just had to be physically painting in front of an audience for some reason, like almost like a comedian where you sort of have to bounce the jokes, but I'm not telling jokes, you know? But I feel as though it's sort of similar because in the end, I'm looking to adequately express my ideas and feelings, but also do it so that other people can sort of relate to it and sort of want it, maybe, you know?
I think that's really interesting. And I was actually going to draw that kind of analogy earlier that I heard that in that other podcast I listened to that, you never really dealt really well with authority. And you had said that you considered yourself pretty unemployable at this juncture of the game. But I'm thinking to myself as you're talking that it seems like a great training ground to do stand-up comedy, and you obviously, if you can take people making snide comments and heckling you all day long, you could probably get up on a stage and tell jokes, but you also feed off that energy. And like a lot of comics, you obviously are a keen observer of human nature and you like to people watch. I just get that sense. So I don't know, maybe that's your second career if the painting thing doesn't work out.
Well, if there was something that would draw a crowd and that people would be willing to pay for to just walk up and see me paint and interact with me, I mean, I'd say, yeah, I'll do that. Like, it doesn't make any sense though. It's not really a thing. Like if you look at all the, if you kind of run the numbers, look at the charts and adjust the dials, there's no real way that something visual can translate to the way that maybe stand-up comedy would. Although it's very tempting. And I have thought about that before. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I do feel that sometimes it's easier to speak about what I do in terms that are outside of fine art. Like you said, with stand-up comedy. I mean, I think I'm much more comfortable if someone were to approach me in a gallery setting and ask about a particular piece. I'd be more comfortable approaching it in a completely different way than just talking about myself, sort of going through that process. I'd probably want to do some kind of shtick. That's the first thing that I would kind of pop up in my mind. Like in this interaction, like how can I do anything but talk about my painting?
Tenant wants to acknowledge our media sponsor, New Magazine. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. And I want to share with you something very exciting. Check out the newly launched New Denver Gallery Guide. Look for the signage that says New Denver Gallery Guide that has a QR code. Scan it with your phone, and you have instant access to a comprehensive digital guide to Denver's finest galleries and exhibitions. Find this QR code in your favorite gallery, hotel, or coffee shop as you visit and explore Denver. Thanks for listening.
Hey, I'm Chris Long, and you're listening to the Tenant Podcast.
How does your skill set as a sculptor, or what skill sets as a sculptor, helped you with your painting? As far as, is there stuff that translated? Obviously, there's the foundations of, that kind of ties all different mediums together. But is there anything off the top of your head that you can think of that you were able to bring from your working as a sculptor into what you do now as a painter?
Yeah, I had some really great teachers at the academy. Don and Sharon Gale. People can look up their work. They did a lot of sculpture for the casinos here in Connecticut, back maybe 20 years ago. But I had Don in many classes when I was a teenager, and he one day was explaining to me how there's a difference between energy and impact and witness, and how you have to balance those things. And the way that you do that is through the form, and you move the form so that it has impact at this particular way that you view it, and then it has energy as you move around it, and it relates to the person in the space. I like thinking about things in those kind of terms, where if you can break it down into threes, it seems palatable in my mind. So for me, for my work, and when I am assessing what I'm doing, I break it down in those terms. Like I don't really think about certain compositional elements. I don't really say to myself, oh, this color temperature has to be adjusted here and there. I don't hear a painter speaking in my mind. I hear Don and Sharon Gale talking to me about sculpture and about how to relate form. So I think for an intellectual exercise, you could translate that to drawing, photography, painting. You can find, and you can sort of categorize what makes witness, what makes impact, and what makes energy when you, for instance, just look at a two-dimensional image. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I answered your question. I might have gotten off on a little bit of a tangent there. I might have spiraled out a bit. But
No, it was all good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as I keep answering your questions.
Yeah.
To maybe clarify that a little bit more, if something has too much energy that I feel as though whoever is looking at this particular piece I'm working on is just going to, their eye is going to move right past it, then I have to adjust things with the impact and the witness of it. So you're always looking to get kind of a harmony in between those three, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that, man.
It makes perfect sense to me.
No, I think you explained it really well.
Okay.
I want to pull up a piece real quick and talk about this.
If I remember it, I paint over 1,000 a year.
All right. Well,
and that's not a brag. That's just like.
No, I get it. I totally get it. This one's
just my process. I have to keep moving through things.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Napa Moon. It's a 10x8 oil on wood panel. Love this piece.
Thank you. I took a lot of daytime photos when I was in downtown Napa, and then I was in some area by one of the vineyards. I'm terrible at remembering what places are called. I'd have to ask my wife exactly, but I know that I saw something like this at the motorhome or the RV park where I was staying with the moon. But I saw and I captured the trees at that pinnacle at another point. And I remember being outside, and I think I was taking the trash out or something and looking up at the sky and seeing sort of the moon over trees, and then kind of wishing that they were actually over those, what are those, some sort of cypress or something? Just those kind of tall, kind of conical, pointy ones. And I don't know, I was sort of just kind of pushed two memories together, which is what I sometimes do.
That's what I appreciate. I mean, we've talked to some other landscape painters, and we've seen the reference photo that they've painted from, and it's amazing. I mean, like the shittiest photo you've ever seen in your entire life from a photographic standpoint, like taken like in the middle of the day with terrible, the worst contrast ever. It's so contrasty. And yet you put it next to the painting. The painting is like a whole different, I mean, it was what they saw, the shape, the tone, the color in their mind's eye. And it looks nothing like, how do you go from that to this, So that's what I really appreciate.
Yeah,
especially with landscape painting.
I have a little bit of a hard time with my wife's photographs. She's a very good photographer. Sometimes I will purposefully, in one of those phone programs, I'll blur out something, or I'll just desaturate and remove all the things that she was careful to get in an image, just so I can use it for the type of reference I want to use it for. And it's always to, as a means to convey a memory. It's never just to recreate something that happened to be captured with the camera as a tool, So it's sort of like, for you guys, the understanding of the camera as a tool and how to use that to do your bidding to capture the image you want. I don't trust the camera as a tool. So I'm sort of trying to take the mastery of people who take photographs out of my reference stuff. Like, some of the best reference to me were my father's shitty old Polaroids that he took of like ducks in the water along the Connecticut River, of like some car from the 70s that was parked in a weird angle going up a hill with some random trees behind it. A lot of my grandfather, who was also a painter, especially in the last 30 years of his life, he took amazingly shitty photographs. And I've used so many of them in reference to paintings I do of New England, and they work out so well. They're so much better than using some of the other ones, because I can put myself back in the 80s or 90s and sort of try to remember what it was like to be there. And just having that kind of notion of where certain patterns of light and dark would be, just totally non-specific, and then have a bunch of other information that I don't need put in there too, it helps me, because the process of distilling what you need absolutely to work on, if you're not working from life, if you have like references, you need to really key in on certain things you like about your reference images, whether it be a drawing, a photograph, some kind of thing from a magazine. It's really helpful if you can just focus on one thing. And sometimes having terrible images filled with ducks helps you key in on that a little bit better. I don't know. What do you guys think about terrible photographs? Let's go off on that tangent.
You know what? I just think it's interesting where a person's mind goes, like the mindset of different people and how they process stuff. Just seeing a crappy photograph and then seeing this beautiful painting, I'm just amazed of the journey from this crappy photograph and what they took out of it and what they're seeing with, internally and where they go with it, And I have an appreciation for that. Like, I don't care that the photograph is necessarily, or it's not necessarily a good photograph. I'm just amazed at where your brain takes it. You know what I'm saying? I'm interested how people's brains work and how they process information. So it's interesting from a photographic standpoint that you got this crappy photograph, but then you take it and you make this beautiful painting, or you're using it in reference or multiple references and how you stick them all together. Like, people hand me their photographs from their, vacations all the time. And I'll sit there and scrutinize them and go, well, that was composed shitty. And, the lighting sucks and all that. I can appreciate them for what they are, these are memories. This is where they're at and what they're experiencing at that moment. And I have an appreciation for that. So I never look at somebody else's photographs in that aspect. I can look at, if it's being presented as an art photograph, I can appreciate it for what it is, or I can tell you what I don't like about it. I could go either way. I have an appreciation for painting, and I have an appreciation because it's something that I don't do. And so when I'm talking about this situation we were talking to, it was actually Tiffany Mang, who's an incredible gouache and digital painter. I was just amazed to talk with her. And
I think I know who that is. I recognize that name from Instagram.
Yeah, she has a pretty good following. She's done some significant, she's had some really interesting, significant experiences. And she's just an incredible painter. But yeah, just seeing where her mind would go from this photograph to this exquisite painting it's amazing to me. Same thing, obviously we're not looking at a reference photo, but this photo, or this painting Napa Moon that we're looking at right now, I mean, I'm there, man. Like, I've been in that scenario. I've seen that moon. I've seen those trees, silhouetted in the moonlight. And and
interestingly enough, I wanted to see that. I saw the moon like that. And I wanted those trees to be underneath it to align just like that. And that desire is what kind of crafted this painting. So sometimes I'll do that too, where I really wanted a situation I was in to be a little bit more perfect. And so that's what I want to paint it like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, going back to crappy photographs, I think a lot of it has to do with, it can be a really, like Todd was saying, maybe the lighting's wrong or the composition's off, but I can see some really interesting bad photographs, but it's about what it's evoking from me. Maybe it's the use of, maybe it just captures something metaphorically, or it makes you wonder what's going on because maybe it's out of focus, and it's out of focus enough that you have to think about what the images really is, and, a little bit more abstract. And I think that's the beauty of, like, especially like your style of painting, is it's abstract enough that it's not representational of a place, but it's representational of a feeling and an emotion. And I think that's what's appealing.
I think that's great that's what you get from it, because that's part of what I like about paintings, and what's sort of what I'm looking for myself to convey those things.
Yeah. And I've seen, like, there's some people on Instagram that do, let's say, graphic drawings that are so realistic, they're photorealistic. And, I used to be amazed at, wow, what skill that is. But, the longer we've done this podcast and we've, been exposed to abstraction and expressionism and those things, I'm starting to really appreciate the fact that I don't want to capture the perfect representation of, whomever, Michael Jackson or whatever. I want to see something that has a little bit of feeling or a little bit of, nuance to it that's not real. And that intrigues me far more than realism, and I appreciate the skill that these people are. There's one drawer that comes to mind. I don't know his name, but like his stuff is so realistic. And, I know he takes tons of time to be perfect with it. But when I compare, like, I'm amazed at his skill, but I want to come to this kind of the work that you're doing, or Tiffany Mang, or, the list goes on, because it's not representational. It's mostly, like I said, it's about a feeling in emotion. And I love that.
Yeah, it's partially that I'm so impatient too. I have so many ideas that I'm probably some form of ADHD, where I don't have the capacity to really concentrate to work on something for more than probably an hour or two at a time. And then I never want to go back to it. Like that's why I mostly paint small. It wasn't only just because I didn't have a lot of space in my motor coach while I was traveling around. It was also because it's so nice to be able to try to work out an idea and then stop and then do another one and then stop and do another one, because I think that's where I was able to find my kind of point of harmony in that sort of triangle of impact, energy, and witness, to sort of gauge what I felt was successful or not. And now you're probably going to be bringing up more paintings too. And you brought up this piece, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh, well, the next time I do this, because I like to paint paintings of paintings of paintings of paintings, I'm going to do this and this and this different. And, oh, I probably could have moved that there, because that would have given this space, a little bit more of a shape, which might have contributed to the feeling of the breadth of it just a little bit more. And I'm tweaking it as I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm never satisfied.
Yeah. I think
that's the sure sign of a great artist, is that you're never satisfied. I take a photograph or do a photo shoot and I fucking hate everything. Like I just need space from it, and then I need a different perspective. Usually that's my wife that comes in and like, I think you nailed it. I think this is pretty good. In the moment, at the time, I'm like,
yeah.
It was horrible. It was shit.
Partners are good for playing the something or nothing game, but
yeah,
they catch on to what you're doing. Then they can sometimes try to soften the blow a little bit when it's just not a good piece. And I can tell when my wife Becky is doing that. And she doesn't even know she's doing it, but I can just tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. They want to lift you up, and they don't want to say, hey, this is shit. Like, what the hell is going on with you today?
Yeah.
So I totally get that.
It's just a constant, never ending process of adjusting, like just constantly moving the pieces in space somehow to rearrange them. And you're looking for just kind of a moment of magic. And when it hits, it's great. But when it doesn't, I sort of keep playing with the pieces. I keep going. It's fun.
Yeah. And I can see why it's fun. It's so different from photography in that you go and you do a shoot and then it's done. You don't have the ability to, you don't have the latitude to like walk away and then come back to it typically,
Yeah.
You go, you do it, you're done. And then you're calling through images to see where the magic happened. And it, like with people, there's these little nuances that that happen with a person, and there's connection that's happening at the same time. So you're looking at that point in the shoot where you're actually connecting with that person, where they're kind of actually like letting their guard down and letting themselves be themselves in that moment to find that one, right? And you can tell, if you've done it long enough, you're like, yeah, they're really stiff right here. I can see the difference in each expression, like when they're like fully engaged, or they're having a good time, or you've captured that essence of their personality where they're being thoughtful. They're a thoughtful person. All those little things. And I guess that's what I appreciate about what you just said as far as finding the magic, but also the fact that, you get to make that magic, it's an incorporation of a feeling, a memory, an emotion, and then just making it happen. And like you said, sometimes you hit and sometimes you don't, but I appreciate the tenacity and sticking with it, man. Like, and I'm telling you, I'm looking at this Napa Moon piece, and it's entitled Napa Moon, but this could be someplace. To me, it could be someplace in Colorado. When I look at this, I think about standing in the middle of the woods with a good friend of mine that died of ALS. And every time I'm in that situation, I think of him. And when I look at that painting, I think of my friend. It makes me emotional, and it makes me want to be out in the woods. I'm going to bring up another piece that I love and you do a fair amount of these, these camping scenarios. This is just called tent camping. But I mean, how many times have I seen that? I've seen that so many times in my, my lifetime of going out in the woods and camping. I can smell the fire. I can see the, tents illuminated from some kind of lantern or lamp in the inside. I'm probably out,
That's always what I'm trying to do with these night campfire pieces. There's a connection between those almost unnecessarily bright lights that just kind of flash and occur as you're moving your head, as you move away and towards the fire. They may be street lights, they may be someone's flashlight, they may be a light from another campground, even, like distant light, depending on where you are in space. But seeing those almost non sequitur aspects of the environment, that's what gives the campfire more smell to me. And I've been trying for years to figure out how to put lights that don't necessarily belong to the subject matter, that are just sort of happened and that I've seen before and that I obsess over, and how those relate to the smell of a campfire. And I think with this one, I got a little bit closer. There are a few I did maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I'm thinking around 2019, I did a few that were out west, where I also was able to capture a very disconnected light, which in the reference photo I used was never in there. But I had this memory of being there and being annoyed by this light that someone else was shining in another spot, another camping spot. And I think that that's something that maybe is a thread. It's a connector that a lot of people might pick up on. Being out there at night, really just wanting to see the firelight and the starlight, maybe, and some of the glow that is thrown onto it, but then having those other lights in there. Well, not to keep repeating the point, but that's what actually makes the smell for me.
Yeah, I can see that, because there's nothing worse than being out in the woods and people don't realize this, but your eyes will adjust to the dark and you can see really well. You don't need a headlamp. But there's always some asshole walking around with their headlamp on that comes up to you and shines it in your face, or is walking a path near you, and you're like, man, you're killing the vibe. Like, stop.
I know the type of individual you're talking about, and they have invested way too much at REI on all their gear. They feel as though when they're out there camping that they have to, at some point, use every single piece that they bought out. They have to kind of justify the piece's existence in their little trip. So, yeah, way too many lights and doodads hanging off of belts.
Yeah.
Oh man. I will say this, that you talk about the whole color temperature thing and not being necessarily to be into talking about it or discussing it in painterly terms or whatever. But I will say this, you really have a great handle on light. You understand light because it shows in your paintings. And that's what especially with landscape, obviously, I immediately will know if somebody has observed light or if they seem like they understand light, and you understand light. So maybe you can't verbalize like color temperature, but you have it down, man.
Well, I know that I limit my palette so that I don't have to be too conscious of what pigments I'm using and how far into the chromatic gray spec zone I'm getting. Because when you're dealing with color temperature, it's often about what's around it, and that brings up questions of value and intensity. And I'm not sure if my eyes are quite as strong for color as other people's. I don't score very high on those internet tests where you try to choose the one color that's different. I haven't been formally tested for color blindness, but I'm pretty sure that I don't see anywhere near what my wife and daughters see. So for me, it's about knowing or convincing myself that I know how to use the pigments that I do use, because it's such a small mixing dynamic I have between them. When you have 15 to 20 different pigments on your palette, that is an immense array of options that you have. And that also gives you more opportunity to choose poorly early on in the game. When you're in the late stages of a painting, you can usually fix colors and you can fake it. But early on, because I don't think that I have quite the eye for color temperatures, especially with pink, red, orange, that when I limit the amount of pigments, I am able to more confidently put down shapes, color shapes in the beginning, and have those carry throughout the piece and form my color world. And I don't have to keep going back and trying to reorganize my color shapes or wipe down things, scrape down things that are incorrect. I like to I like to start off strong, so to speak, in my mind. So that's why sometimes will stop a painting and toss it to the side 15 minutes into it because my my first attempt at organizing my shapes and colors wasn't there. And I just find that for myself, when I severely limit my palette, like, I mean, it's hard to go below 4 or 5 colors. That's usually the minimum of the minimal palette I use. But I find that I have more successes that way. And it's also easier to figure out what colors work together. I have attempted to use 15, 20 different pigments. I've tried to put absolutely all the different colors of paint I own and see how a painting came out, and it was a gray, muddy mess. And I was giving it the old college try, you know, like I thought that I was going to figure out how I could make it all work. It was too much of an effort for me. Yeah, through a lot of trial and error, I found that my bowling bumpers have to be set down in order for me to get the ball of pins, to use a bowling analogy. Because I know I can tell the two of you love bowling.
I love bowling.
I used to bowl on a league back in the day, but
I really like it too. I'm terrible at it though. But I hope that something I said in there was salvageable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know what?
Basic color theory that I have.
I think in talking to a couple artists that we've talked to on this podcast and in other conversations we've had in person, I can think of 2 particular people. One is that Tiffany Mang, that, you know, she keeps the color palette really simple. She's like, you don't need all these different colors. You can work off pretty much what you just laid down, 4 or 5 different colors, and work it from there. You just got to know how to mix, right? And then we have a friend, Georgia Amar, who is a Denver artist, and she's an incredible printmaker. And she pretty much laid out the same thing. Like, you don't need all these different colors that you're working with. Like, if you know how to mix, you can keep it simple and get these incredible results. And so what you just laid out kind of solidifies it in my mind. And you're coming from the perspective of, you know, this is your experience with it, you know, and not that theirs isn't, but, you know, they were trained as a painter or trained as a printmaker or whatever. And so it's valid, you know.
I should probably get my color vision tested just to know for myself, because taking some crappy online tests and not doing very well is kind of a poor metric to use. And I think I've mentioned it in maybe a few other podcasts too, but I'm not quite sure if my color vision is as sharp as other people's. Like, it might be, I might be a little off in some. I'd like to actually know once and for all, because I've been accused of being a colorist. Like, as far as painting goes, and that's very nice and flattering. I think I'm just a minimalist, maybe.
Well, whatever you're doing is working for you, man. And I don't, you know, maybe it would put your mind at ease to know that you have some kind of color blindness or whatever. But we've talked to multiple people that are fantastic artists, painters, collagists. One guy that we had on, he draws for The Simpsons, the TV show. He does all the backgrounds and stuff. Now, obviously, that palette and what they do is, you know, pretty gaudy and all that stuff. But I mean, he's done illustrations for children's books, and all these people that I'm talking about, they don't suffer from being great artists because they're colorblind. So I'd say just keep rolling with what you're doing and don't sweat the small stuff, man. I want to pull up another piece here that I want to talk about. I just love all these nocturnes that you do. This is called revision. And all three of these pieces that we've been talking about, this is another 10 by 10.
These are all very recent pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're all fantastic, man. And this works out because I don't have to go back 200 pieces before and you're like, I don't even remember painting that.
Okay.
This is all
Yeah,
recent stuff that you can remember, but this is a fantastic piece.
This type of piece, it's sort of like I've only seen, or I've only really experienced this atmosphere of, that really kind of rich, deep cloud against this kind of blue green that sort of warms up to like a yellow, in Florida. Tampa, Fort Myers area is where I saw a lot of it. But the first few years we were there, I witnessed a few times driving back to wherever I was at night and seeing these. And they're surprisingly positive and hopeful for the palette that I use for them. Most times, like if you go to, I remember being at Disney World and seeing this store called Memento Mori, and it's all about, it's referencing the death photos from, I think it was the late 19th, early 20th century when they took post-mortem photos, especially of young people after they passed, as sort of like memory family heirlooms. And this kind of blue-green is used often in that store for all of the Haunted Mansion things and some of the stickers and the toy line. And it's supposed to be creepy. But when I've witnessed this in nature, in the areas of Florida that I'm talking about, it's always been amazing. And I haven't seen it too often. But another strange thing about this type of painting is that when I post these, sometimes they'll sit in my website gallery for weeks. And sometimes, like, I'll post it and within 5 minutes, it'll be gone. It'll be sold. I think other people remember this. It's very difficult to find photos, like actual photo reference of things with this kind of, I use phthalo blue-green as a basis for my palette for these pieces. But it's not rare that you actually can witness something this intense. And I keep going back to this sort of thing. Like a lot of my pieces with the title Caloosahatchee River will have a similar feel, because in the Fort Myers area, when I was staying there for several months, I witnessed this there too. And it's kind of magic. It's very fleeting. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think about the coloration of it?
I love it. That's why I pulled it up. Like,
Okay.
I feel like I've seen this before, somewhere. I mean, it draws me in, and again, elicits kind of a feeling. It takes me someplace.
I'm pretty sure that the photo I used just to get the background of, I think it was Tampa, or it was somewhere along Tampa Bay there. I'm pretty sure my wife took the photo, but it was was a grayed out photo. It wasn't great. There was a lot of glare because of the windshield of our motorhome when we were traveling over there. It's off of some road that leads to a campground, and I wanted to use this for a photograph taken around that area, because that's how a lot of Florida I use this with, because that's how I remember Florida.
It's a great piece.
I appreciate it. It's called revision because that particular day I restarted this one 3 or 4 times before I was happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was determined, because I really wanted to do another one of these. And I wanted to get it. Like, I was determined. Some days I'm able to just leave it and kind of toss it and wait maybe till next week until I feel that I could tackle it again. And sometimes it just pisses me off that it's not coming. Like, I really had it in my mind's eye, and I kept digging at it and kept going for it. And this was the time that I was satisfied with the result. And I'll probably do 10 more paintings of this painting, which is based partially on another painting and on a shitty photo reference, because that's part of what I really enjoy too. Like, I do paintings of paintings of paintings of paintings if I can, because just looking at this right now, I'm thinking of the next painting I'm going to do with it, like the things I'm going to change. Like, I don't know if that works for photography. How would that work for photography? Like, you really can't recreate the circumstance unless you really have a controlled environment, right? So if you go through like a whole batch of photos that you just took, like, are you able to say, yeah, and you cull out all the ones that you don't like, and you're like, this one, I'm gonna print this one, but it's so good, and I really had something here that I'm gonna go and I'm gonna try to recreate this exact same situation but make it better. Do you ever do that?
Well, I think you could do it in post, where you're working with levels or saturation or hue, and you're just trying to change it up enough. And I'm a kind of a minimalistic when it comes to post production. I don't mess with a lot. I'll do a lot of black and white, but I think that's where a guy could. But if you have a studio set up and you're doing, let's say, a still life, you could go back and recreate that. Like light it a little different, come back, and reset it up, maybe move stuff around. You could do it that way. But I can see like doing, because I shoot a lot of landscape, and I can see coming back and, like I've done a lot of stuff where I was doing color photography, and then I come back and look at it and I'm like, let me play with this as a black and white, and then trying to get it so it looks good. So there is that kind of play with it, but I'm kind of minimalistic in that sense that I don't do a ton of that kind of work. I don't know if Todd, do you do more of that kind of? You're kind of the same way, aren't you?
I don't tend to manipulate stuff. Like, I want to get it all in camera.
Yeah.
Because I come from a background of film when we didn't have the latitude of playing with stuff in post-production. So I come from the mindset, I want to get it in camera from the get-go. I use it as a post-production as a tool to accommodate something that I just knew wasn't going to happen, or I'm not going to be able to go back and do it. But I'd rather just go to a place and get the right light, get the right angle on it, do my due diligence, and get it all in one fell swoop. What I don't relate to, and I just went to an art festival, and there was beautiful photographs of amazing places, some well done, some not well done, because we live in this era where everybody tries to do all this funky stuff in software, and I hate it when it doesn't look real. I'd rather look at a painting of a landscape than a photograph of a landscape. And the reason I don't do a lot of landscape photography, and I always enjoy it when I go out because it's so completely out of my wheelhouse of what I normally do. It's just refreshing to me. But I can't tell you how many times I didn't set up a camera and I just watched a sunset, or I just took in the light of like what we're looking at right now in revision and just wanted to experience it firsthand as opposed to having some kind of tool between me and that experience. Right.
Yeah.
There's a feeling that's captured with a painting that you don't, it's replication with a photograph, and you never capture it as the same as what you were experiencing at the time. People appreciate it. They go, oh, it's a pretty photograph, they like it, but I don't necessarily, a lot of times it doesn't evoke emotion for me, like what I'm seeing here on the screen with your painting.
Well, I like to call it irrational believability. And that's what I look for when I'm looking at other people's work. I want it to be within the realm of believability, but I'm looking for aspects of the work that really pushed something. That it doesn't have to be overt. It can be sublime gesture in the medium that does it. I'm looking for something that if you were to write it down, like if you were to translate that image into a paragraph, there would be a lot of unnecessary semicolons and quotations around proper nouns where there shouldn't be, but somehow everything makes sense. And it's believable that if you read it, and if you read it with passion, that it would connect.
Well, it definitely connects. I mean, you were asking me what I like about this painting, and as we're talking, I see more and more stuff because I'm spending more time with it. But I love how all the structures are inferred. My brain can go there. It makes it up in my own brain, my own head. I love the reflections that are on the water. And I love the gradation of the color palette from, the dark part of the sky to the light part. And whether that's the sun as it's starting to disappear, because, the sun it's never a symmetrical thing. It always sets in a portion of your viewpoint, right? Or the way that the light pollution is being reflected into clouds. And, that's always a beautiful thing to me, as well as when I see different colored light being reflected or cast off another object or another thing.
Yeah, when I'm looking at this right now, I think the aspect that I really enjoy, like the one thing that I would maybe say, yeah, I'm pretty proud that I was able to pull that off, was the top right area, where it's mostly just blue and a little bit of green, and there's that kind of choppy cloudness. It almost looks like inferred chains in the clouds in the upper right-hand quarter, and there's not a lot happening. And for me, I'm always unsure about just fields of color or inactive spaces. I'm never quite sure how to handle the paint, whether it's going to be enhanced for the negative space, or whether it's going to be thin and an afterthought, and like I want to have the viewer's eye just avoid it completely. But it's one of my favorite spots of the painting, and I think that's part of why this one is maybe more successful than other versions of this sort of feeling of a piece that I've done. Was I was able to get like a certain shape of that blue-green transition, along with some of the kind of patchy cloud shapes. And it looks very random, and it looks like my brush skipped, or that I was just kind of hastily putting paint on. And it just reads as a happy accident to me.
Mm.
And I mean, I really enjoy that.
Yeah. What does it for me, you got a lot of action down below with the reflective light, the cityscape, which I absolutely love. And then you got the upper left, and how your eye travels down to the light. That upper right area gives your place for your eyes to rest. So it's a calming area. But then, and I'm always attracted to this kind of element. The thing that really does it for me is the orange in the bottom left. And that little element of something a little different really kind of sets it apart. Like if that orange wasn't there, and let's say it was all just that kind of like muted yellow and green, I don't think it would work. But that splash of orange like really does it for me. And but yeah, this is really a beautiful piece.
I kind of think about areas of color like that as the chopped up green onion that they sprinkle on General Tso's chicken when you get it. That's supposed to give it that pop of color. And you know what? I don't want to eat General Tso's chicken without the green onion on top, because I think that makes it.
Right.
It's just like that little bit of contrast that sort of makes it more appealing.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of painters really enjoy the red dots, and the red elements, and they want to put a little piece of red in areas. I don't really use red like that too often. I think for me it's definitely orange touches that really they're the scallions, those little pieces of orange paint for me.
Yeah. And orange works really well with this. I mean, it works within the color palette. I think red would be too much, but I've seen those paint. I mean, we've talked about paintings just like that, where they use this line of red, and it looks almost random, but at the same time, because they're master painters or whatever, and it just like that works. And I would have never thought of doing that. Yeah. And I think this orange works because it's a warm feeling in a very cool painting,
Yeah, it goes back to that irrational believability. When they can put a line of red where it doesn't make sense, that's a sentence with 4 exclamation points. You don't need that, but it works.
Yeah.
It anchors the painting. The painting has a lot of flow to it, but it gives your eye a place to go. And then you continue to move around because there's like, there's those reflections in the water, and I love that. And then, the city, the structures of the city in the distance all lit up. And then, I was definitely drawn to the upper. I'm pointing to it like you can actually see me pointing at my screen. But that upper right-hand corner with that transition of the colors, I just love that. I mean, yeah, it's exquisite, man. You should be, obviously you are happy with it, but yeah, it's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. Another thing I'll say is that you probably notice that I do a lot of cloudscape type landscape work, and that the clouds are always moving, and that they're always connected to several points. I use a lot of square formats, and I do it because I'm looking for torsion. Like I'm looking for a feeling of twisting, because I feel as though when I look up at the sky, which I do quite often, things that really stop me from breathing, where I'm like, oh, wow, where I just have to, where I'm actually conscious of my breath in and out, are situations where I'm perceiving that things are turning and twisting, and there's some kind of force that's moving them towards a center point or kind of blowing them out from that center point. And I think that's what can sometimes give compositions that breath of life, is the torsion.
Yeah, it gives a sense of movement.
And then other pieces like you have here, I have very little torsion. And yeah, it's really interesting that you chose this one too. It's titled Backlit Sky. And when we were traveling, I think we were in Western Pennsylvania early on when we had the motorhome. And we were going in and out of storms, trying to get through that part of the country until we could hit, I think it was Ohio. And it got to be the evening, and the sun was setting, but you couldn't figure out where the sun was. And the clouds were just incredibly cold looking. And the sky behind just kind of glowed with a radiance that didn't make sense. And this is another piece that is a painting of a painting of a painting of a painting. And I keep searching for that feeling. And I like this version. I'm not sure if it's really what I'm after, though. And if you look back through my thousands of examples on my Instagram site, because I never remove anything. I put stuff there, and I don't necessarily think a lot of it belongs there even, but I think it's important if someone wants to go back and see some pieces that are obviously like failures or incomplete notions of things. But if you go back far enough, you're going to see more and more and more of these. And I've seen this other places in the country too, but my memory of it is driving the motorhome and being nervous about towing a car behind the motorhome and having the storms come through, and then this constantly on the horizon, and not understanding how that glow was so intense and so subtle at the same time. And I kind of push the color in this one. I think other times I did not have anywhere near this sort of kaleidoscopic background, or kind of, those talon and claw shaped clouds. I just thought I'd give it a go,
If you don't try, you don't know. And that's what I think
that's how I feel.
Differentiates like somebody that's successful. You're exploring. We just talked to another artist that, he does a little bit of everything. He's multidisciplinary. And, he talked about essentially what you're talking about as far as like paintings of paintings, exploring that and just going for it. How many different ways can he explore a particular subject or an object, and I think that's really fascinating.
I also have to have fun with it. If I'm doing a painting of a painting and then suddenly I'm not having fun, that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
Like I need to keep a certain sense of wondering how it's going to turn out. And I have to be excited about seeing the end result, like not just the kind of meditative process of going through and choosing the image and laying it out, blocking it out, adding the color, figuring out where to add my emphasis, color thickness, adjusting intensity, this and that. Like, that's all process stuff. And that is, it's become more automatic for me to address those same things every single time. And what's in the forefront while I'm working, probably in the last year or two, is especially, because I'm alone here, just myself in my studio, maybe playing a podcast or some music. Like, I want to be having fun doing it. Like, it needs to be amusing me. Even if I'm making a mess, it needs to amuse me,
Yeah.
So I think I'm focused on both the process and the outcome in order to achieve that amusement. I'm really impatient about seeing it finished.
So that's a driving force right there, because you got to see it to the finish. You want to see how it turns out. You want to see what the end of the movie is like, right?
Yes, and I want to watch like 15 movies a day, and I want to see how they all turn out. And then I want to wake up the next morning and possibly see the same 15 movies and have them all turn out different. Like, I have this desire for this kind of input, and I want to take some of the same elements and sort of cook it the same way, but have a different result magically, like some kind of mystic intervention will step in, and the old adage of, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. I want to do the same thing over and over, and I want different results.
I've seen some of your still life stuff. I've seen some of your figurative work, but what initially drew you to landscape?
Okay. There are a lot of paintings I see that I really like, of portraits, figurative work, that are done by artists who devote a lot of time to it. And same thing with still life. And I feel like right now it's more advantageous for me to have more of a particular focus on landscape, because I think I can offer painting as a whole something when I paint a landscape more than if I were to attempt to get across the same information, the same feeling, using different subject matter. When I see other landscape paintings in galleries or museums, I actually have, my ego has the thought. Like, I can actually hear my brain have the thought, and it says, you could probably fix this. I don't have the same, my ego doesn't have the same like notion. I don't hear the same thing in my head when I look at like a really careful trompe l'oeil of something, or when I see a very well executed portrait that looks like it has 4 or 5 brushstrokes magically somehow, and it forms an expression perfectly. Like, I just feel I can offer something to landscape painting. I think my sensibilities, starting off as a sculptor, can sort of manifest in creating atmosphere. I mean, and people on the street told me that they like my landscapes. Like, yeah, it seems so foolish. It seems too simplistic to just decide that because the public voted, but Yeah, when I would have displays of work, I'd have some, for years, like local interest still lifes. I'd have some figurative work, um, and then I'd have some landscape work. And yeah, a lot of times people were drawn to my landscapes. There was something about them. Something I was doing, they were relating to more, you know? Like they picked it up and they held it longer and they looked at it more. That was what probably made me think that if I kept at it and if I kept chugging along, if I kept the practice up, that I could really manifest something eventually that was meaningful. I guess it's sort of the same thing when you're young and your parent puts something that you drew on the fridge, and then you sort of feel good about it. It's like, what if something that they put on the fridge never came off the fridge? And they would cycle through all the other stuff, but they were like, no, we're keeping that on the fridge. That's sort of like how I felt about when I first started to do landscapes. Like something really clicked.
It was
And if people bring them home and put it on their fridge, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. You can shove it in a drawer, put it in your closet.
It's the nonverbal something or nothing game.
Mm,
They picked it up. They held it in their hands.
yeah.
And then they coveted it enough that they voted with their money and went home happy.
Yes. To a certain extent, that has to be important if you're going to be a full-time fine artist. You need to take into consideration what you do that connects with others so that they want to exchange energy with you. Like if money's energy, like if they're willing to say, yes, this is worth that, then it's sort of inevitable.
Yeah.
You obviously do this for yourself. You're passionate about it and you're business savvy. Do you treat your art practice as a job as well? Is that a facet of it? Obviously, you have to support your family. You have to put food on the table.
I am fortunate in that my business model is very simple, and I happen to have some success with it. I do, like, from spending years as like a market and street artist, the way you sell work, the way that you keep perpetuating, giving yourself, like re-employing yourself every day, because it's like you don't have a job. You have a job interview with yourself in the public every day. You go in and you're hired, and we'll see if you make a paycheck. It's every single day. So I took that notion and I sort of tried to keep everything as simple as possible. And in the morning, when I start my process all over again, I am applying for the same job. And I'm not thinking about diversifying. I'm not thinking about changing things up too much. Like, for instance, I don't make prints of my paintings. I decided that was too complicated. I didn't like seeing flattened, glossy images of something that had a lot of topography, depth, a lot of interest, a lot of scraped areas all the way down to almost to the wood that you could see only if you held it and looked and tilted it. I didn't like how the space was compressed like that. So I didn't really believe in it, so I don't do it. And people keep trying to convince me, well, you won't have to paint as much if you just sell prints of your paintings. You can spend longer on bigger paintings, Chris. You can just spend forever on a painting and make limited edition run of prints. That's how people who are running their businesses and doing well, that's how they're doing it. You should just do that. And it doesn't feel right. It feels better just to hustle still and to keep making the originals and keep every single aspect of the process as simple as possible. Like, I paint it, take a digital photograph of it. I do my absolute best to make sure that it looks as close to the actual painting as it can. I post it online, and if a collector wants it, they get it. What I have is consistency. So I built my business on sort of people being able to rely on new paintings every day. I mean, virtually every day of the year. I mean, there's some days where I'm just really ill or I can't do something or, but I'm a daily painter, not just in title. I mean, every single day I'm working and posting new work. And I think that when people see that effort and when they know that I'm still searching for things and then I keep working and I'm working on paintings of paintings of paintings, they know that they can come back at different points and see different pieces that might fit with what they want. And I don't have to make prints because I'm consistent enough with how I post and how I add pieces in my gallery so that there's always new things coming in. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Did I just make up a new question and answer it myself? Am I doing that now? I didn't know that Tenet was my podcast. Shit.
Well, you're welcome to take it over. Well, we might trade for some painting, but
no.
we definitely could give you a prize. So you just let us know. How do you go about pricing your work?
Half of all comments I get are your paintings are priced way too low. And the other half are your paintings are out of my price range. I can't afford your work. That's my comfort zone. If I can get half of the comments to be too high, half of the comments too low, that's how I kind of know that I'm in the right spot, I'm probably butchering this horribly, but someone told me about this old army saying about overshooting with a tank gun and then undershooting. And then when you shot too far, when you shot too close. So the third time, you're right in the middle. And that's where you want to hit. That's your target. So I increase my prices every year. And I don't do so just kind of willy-nilly. I think it's important to value myself and my time. And as I put more and more effort into this, that the price will keep going up incrementally. But I think that it's decent, the method that I use. And I could just be fooling myself right now. I could be totally full of shit. But I think that it's fair to charge by the square inch for what I do. So I work out $1 per square inch. And I have that basic notion in mind. So very, very large pieces will naturally be more. And the smaller ones, I think my smallest that I really do right now are around 6 by 6 inches. And I base things off of the square inch being an approximation of my time and effort. And when I can when I can assign a dollar amount to that amount of space, I feel good about it. So I know that other people have all sorts of different ways that they price their stuff. They've told me, even though I haven't asked, they've been very forthcoming, and they try to convince me to do it their way too, because it's obviously a better way. But I just keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, it's obviously working for you, so why fuck with it, right?
Well, I mean, I just do it by the square inch. You know, I don't frame my work.
Yeah, I noticed that. I saw that you said that on your.
It's straight oil paint on primed wood, like cradled wood panels. It's very straightforward. I like to keep everything very transparent. I don't use any mediums. I don't use water, gel. I don't spray it with anything. I don't frame it. It's just, I paint the image, I let it dry, and then I ship it to you. And I mean, I had to keep it simple for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm a creature of habit. You know, I need to keep, when I think of my stock, like I have to keep my my materials and how much space I'm using for them, you know. And I have these very complicated formulas that that I haven't even really rationalized yet. Like I couldn't describe them to you, like if you force me to, but I know they're in there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of personal metrics on things.
Yeah.
And all your sales come directly through you. You don't have gallery representation. Is that correct?
No. I've had interest in having pieces in galleries, but they come with a lot of caveats. I know that they take a percentage, like that's understandable, but they want it framed. They want certain sizes. There's requests to cater to certain audiences, certain places of the country. It seems like a complication. So I haven't run into many deals yet that I thought were worth it. And I mean, I'm open to it, but the gallery owners I texted with or emailed with back and forth, they seem to be really firm on what they thought was their kind of their bread and butter, and they thought they knew where I would fit into their gallery. If I were to just X, Y, and Z, then those sales would come. But yeah, I wasn't sure about it. I had a lot of gallery experience as a sculptor, and I never had positive experiences with it. It was always a pain in the ass. No one ever understood casting fees and how I wanted that to come out first before the profit was negotiated. And yeah, I had a very poor experience as a sculptor with with most gallery things. So I'm a little bit more cautious going into it. I think eventually I would like to. I mean, I'd like to have I'd really like to have the feedback. I think that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I think having professional gallerists, you know, sort of take a look at something I would deliver and tell me what the client's reaction was, so that I could maybe gauge more for myself going forward with my own business, like what to pursue, but hasn't really come up yet. I've tried to get involved with plein air stuff, the plein air painting, painting out in the open, and I've done some of it. I sat outside a lot, outside of the motorhome, places that we visit, like national parks, and just painted what I saw. I understand it, and I can't stand the bugs. I don't like taking miniature versions of my stuff from one place to another, and then having to clean up everything. It just seems like additional challenges I'd have to be giving to myself to be painting everything from life. And with what I really like to paint, which is low light situations, like sunset, sunrise, nocturnes, that's even more labor intensive to set up that situation and get it right. I feel like I'd be spinning my wheels a little if I were to do that, but I've attempted to do some local things, but no, I haven't been chosen yet to participate in anything. I don't know whether the idea is that I'm mostly just a studio painter, so maybe I wouldn't fit in or what, but I'll probably keep applying to a few every year just to see.
Yeah. So do you have a lot of inventory available or pretty much everything? No. So you just, for a collector, you got to be watching your website, seeing what's new being presented every day.
It was outrageous at some points during the pandemic. Like PayPal doesn't allow you to purchase a piece once it's already been purchased, unless two people purchase exactly at the same time. That happened not once, not twice, but 7 times.
Wow.
During 2021, where people from opposite sides of the country saw a painting, went on PayPal, were convinced that they were going to get it, and I got double payments. I had to return the payment to one person to be like, I don't know how this happened, but someone else purchased at the exact same time, but somehow was 1 second ahead of you. That kind of madness doesn't really happen now. Now there's a little bit more of, people are viewing it, they come back to it. Sometimes I'll get emails asking more questions about specific pieces. I mean, it's not quite as maddening as it was a few years back. But I don't post everything I paint. I post things to my website that I think are worthwhile efforts. Like sometimes pieces don't move for a month or two. And sometimes it's like 1 or 2 minutes. I think I know some of the formulas for it, but every time I sit down and rub my hands together, I'm like, okay, let's see what I can figure out today. Let's see if I can make something that really causes a stir. It just sits. Of course it just sits. Because I don't think whenever I have the notion to do that, I don't think that my heart's really in it. Like the passion really isn't there. And I think people are responding more to the feelings I'm making. And, if I'm just polishing turds, they're 100% in the right to be like, no, I think that one can just languish on your website, Chris.
Oh, man. I think that's the bane of every artist. They always, there's certain things that I think everyone thinks, oh man, this is gonna hit, or this is gonna move, or somebody's gonna love that. And for whatever reason, a lot of times it doesn't. And the thing that maybe they don't care for, or they don't like, or they didn't think it was the best thing in their inventory, for whatever reason, that thing moves. So it's always
That
kind of a
yes,
crapshoot, you know?
that is often a mental exercise that I've come to believe is rather futile, because I can't get around myself and actually figure out anything without having Chris chime in. I can't do these calculations without my ego. It comes in, it seeps in. I can't make business decisions without Chris involved. And that's my biggest problem. I don't know if you guys ever feel like
You're in your own way. Yeah.
yeah, we need to get Todd and Wes out of the situation here.
You do commissions. How much of or what percentage of your work are those commissions, and what is that process?
Not much. I open it up in January, and it usually fills up pretty quick. And this year I ended up closing my commission list in early February for the whole year. I don't like to do too many of them. And I don't mean to be a prick, but I just don't want to paint certain things. Sometimes it's not about the financial reward for doing it. I want to have fun doing it. And if I'm going to dread it, if I'm going to wait till the absolute last minute to do it, it's just going to make me feel horrible, and I don't want to do it. So, believe it or not, I turn down most of the commission requests I get. And I work on 1 or 2 a month. That's it. Because I don't have the energy for it. What that involves is a back and forth, an extension of the artist-client relationship that I'm not always comfortable with. I'm very comfortable with, you see something, if you like it, you take it. And if you don't, you leave it. I'm comfortable with that. Where it gets dicey is where, if you don't like it, and if you've already paid for it, but I do like it, what happens then? And I try to make those sort of situations. I mean, it doesn't really happen. Like I'm saying this as if that's ever happened. It doesn't really happen. Like, I haven't experienced that myself, but I have this projection that it might, and it's an unreasonable fear. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get myself in a situation where I have to constantly be changing little things and having someone approve them or disapprove them, So I try to write it into my commission guidelines that there aren't any edits and, no refunds. And I try to be as hard ass as I can about it. I tell you, the people who are all for it and are like, yes, I trust you, go with it. I have great experiences with it. They really enjoy what they get. I enjoy doing it. So my commission situation might not work for everyone, but being especially choosy and difficult about it has benefited me. I think
that's legit. You got to have fun with it. Your heart's got to be into it. And if you're not feeling it, then you shouldn't do it. Right. So I think you should be choosy and picky about what you do and what you take on.
I mean, have either one of you ever had, I haven't had one of those commission things where someone has wanted to pay you for something and you deliver it, and then they're like, oh no, what I really wanted was this. You go back and you do it, and then they say, oh yeah, and they keep on changing the little things with it. Like I know other people tell me about like um, the quote unquote horror stories that come along with allowing yourself to do the commission work, but I don't really, that doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
And I don't blame you. I mean, um, I think you got to set parameters that work for you. And if people don't like it, tough. They don't have to do it. It's just like whether or not they are going to collect a piece of yours or not,
Hmm.
Either you're in all in or you're not. So,
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't sweat it.
Yeah.
Um, we recently talked to Edward Mapplethorpe on the podcast, and he does these commissions of these 1-year-old portraits, and he spells it out to a T. Like, this is the way it goes. Like, the parents have absolutely zero say in the process. In
That
fact,
is music to my ears.
they don't even get to be on set with him while they're
Yeah.
photographing their child.
Yeah.
He doesn't want that interaction. It's just him and them,
I,
the kid.
I think that's where great things uh, manifest is when there's trust.
Yeah.
And if you are commissioning a work and you don't fully trust the artist that you're working with, you might want to hold off and have someone else do it, Like there are so many people out there too, so many people who would love to work on a large landscape commission and would have no problem at all working with the client, going back and forth, sending photos. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And it's just not me.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to do it for you. I mean, even if it's a commission, you got to do the work because you want to, and you, like you said, you want to have fun. That's the most important thing.
We're going to start to wrap this up. I just have a couple more questions. Wes, you have anything that you want to
Nope. I'm
jump
good.
in with?
I'm listening. Yeah.
Who would you say is your biggest support?
Definitely my family. It's been a big change for them, for me working in a home studio in a stick and brick house, where before I left often to work, or I worked outside, or I went to a market and I was away. And now I'm back and I'm feet away from them, but I'm asking them to give me space. So the fact that my daughters and my wife and even my dog are pretty good about allowing me to have like the time I need to sort of work through my stuff instead of repairing something or helping doing something else, is the actual support that matters. I don't know. I don't know if I'd consider people outside of my immediate family to be really supporting me like that. I feel as though sales, commissions, collaborations, things like this, they're endorsements, they're encouragements, but I see them as kind of a temporary transaction. And it's more how you have to sort of navigate your family relationships.
What do you do with your money when you make a big sale, or big sales in your case?
I don't buy watches or cars. I don't do anything fancy. A big sale. Well, everything just goes to my family. I mean, I have more bills that are paid. That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't really, how some people are like, they have this vision for themselves, like they're working towards something. I haven't allowed myself the time to really solidify that vision in any way that it could be solidified. Like, I don't have the proverbial vision board where I think, oh, well, I make this next big sale and I'm going to put money aside to do this or do that. It just everything that the government doesn't take, my wife reallocates. And sometimes I get some coffee money and I've been into collecting Lego again. As a kid, I had a really big Lego collection. And when I first got on the road in the RV, I took some of it with me and I would build things for my eldest daughter when she was very young. And I had a fun time building things that she wanted in Lego. And it was kind of great because we didn't have to invest in a lot of toys for her. We could just build things together and I could build things for her. And then at one point, I couldn't store it anymore. So I gave it all away. Like I needed to free up the space. We didn't have the storage spot that we had for a little while. And I just thought, yeah, this is a few $1,000s worth of Lego, but I'm just going to let it go. And then someday I'll just start collecting again. And now once in a while I'll buy like a little Lego car or build a castle or something. And that's my big extravagance.
I love that. That's great extravagance.
I don't really foresee myself doing like I'm not looking to open a gallery. I'm not looking to fly to exotic locations and have students come with me to do destination painting vacations. I'm just eventually looking for another motorhome. And I just really like doing what I'm doing. So yeah, the sales from my paintings just go towards living, basically. And yeah, and getting out there to eventually take more photos, other places, more reference photos. I did a lot of standing out in the middle of nowhere. And that's where I get a lot of my inspiration. A lot of my best memories come from walking out from my motorhome late at night, early in the morning, and just standing and watching the sky and listening for things and just trying to notice things. And it's tough around me right now because I have all these other people living around me permanently. These neighbors and their cars, and they park all fucked up. They're walking their dogs. Like, I can't just go out and watch things now.
Right.
I need to get a motorhome so I can travel somewhere else, step outside of it, and watch things again.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that.
And he just answered what my final question was going to be, which was,
oh, really?
Yeah. What is your favorite journey? But I think you just spelled it out right there.
I never get tired of leaving a place and then going back to it. So it's not like I can only go somewhere once and then get too bored and then never want to return. So traveling around the US was fun. I want to go to other places, I've been to Ireland a few times. Had to stop over a few other places, but
anything else you want to talk about or mention, promote before we sign off for the evening?
I am starting to get a little raspy and you let me talk far too much. Like I'm not used to having to articulate this. The amount of words coming out of my face right now are just making me cough. No, I have nothing else to say. If you have other questions, shoot me a text or an email. I'll answer.
No, dude, we
appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and boy, I love your work. I think you're doing amazing stuff, and I'd love to catch up with you again sometime and talk about RVing because I love those stories. But thanks for sitting down with us and talking. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate you guys having me on Tenant, and it was great to finally meet you both, Todd and Wes.
Yeah.
I know this was time away from your family, or you could have been working, but I think you work mostly in the morning, right? Is that correct?
Early morning, yeah.
Yeah. But I do appreciate you taking the few hours that you did this evening.
This was a lot of fun. No, I did a whole bunch of random podcasts at one point and then didn't do it for a long time and just was kind of like, well, I guess I did all my podcasts. I don't have to do any more. And I wasn't really sure about the state of the art podcast or if anyone was really enthusiastic about possibly having me on again. And I just kind of put it out of my head. And like you guys contacted me and this was a lot of fun. It's good practice for me to have to put into words some of the things that are rattling around in my head because most of the time I don't have to. Like I don't have to justify myself to anyone usually. And it's very helpful. It's great exercise.
Good.
I'm glad you felt that way. Yeah, it was a fantastic conversation, man. Thank you so much.
Great.
Again, don't forget to follow Chris on Instagram at @long_painter and check out Chris's work at his website, chrislongpainter.com. I will have all this and more in this week's episode notes for the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.